Good evening, everybody. Breaking tonight, Attorney General Jeff Sessions today under pressure to appoint a second special counsel to investigate Clinton corruption. One of the Republican congressmen demanding Sessions do what's right is Congressman Jim Jordan. He's our special guest here tonight. Also, the Senate, following President Trump's wishes, Senate leaders have announced they plan to eliminate the Obamacare individual mandate to help pay for their tax reform legislation. And President Trump on his way home, back to Washington, back to the swamp after his successful trip to Asia. We take up his accomplishments on the world stage. Our top story tonight, Attorney General Sessions testifying before the House Judiciary Committee. The committee Republicans have been waiting 3.5 months after they asked for a second special counsel to investigate Clinton corruption. Today, they finally got what might pass for an answer with some, but it satisfied almost no one on the committee. Congressman Jim Jordan, one of those, trying to get a straight answer from the Attorney General. Good evening, Congressman. Great to have you with us. Let's, as we begin here, share some of your direct questioning of the Attorney General with the audience.
Well, we know one fact. We know the Clinton campaign, the Democrat National Committee paid for, through the law firm, paid for the dossier. We know that happened. And it sure looks like the FBI was paying the author of that document. And it sure looks like a major political party was working with the federal government to then turn an opposition research document, the equivalent of some National Enquirer story, into an intelligence document, take that to the FISA court so that they could then get a warrant to spy on Americans associated with President Trump's campaign. That's what it looks like. And I'm asking you, doesn't that warrant, in addition to all the things we know about James Comey in 2016, doesn't that warrant naming a second special counsel, as 20 members of this committee wrote you 3.5 months ago asking you to do?
Well, Mr. Comey is no longer the director of the FBI.
Thank goodness.
We have an excellent man of integrity and ability in Chris Wray, and I think he's going to do an outstanding job, and I'm very happy
He's not here today, Attorney General.
And I would say,
you are, and I'm asking for a special counsel.
The time of the gentleman
and I would say
expired.
looks like is not enough basis to appoint a special counsel.
Whoa, looks like not enough. Congressman, was your blood boiling at that point with that answer?
Yeah, more importantly, Lou, the American people want that answer. I mean, think about what sure looks like took place. The idea that one major party can finance an opposition research document working with, looks like complicit with the federal government, the FBI, who may have been paying Christopher Steele, the author of that document. They then take that document, present it as an intelligence document to the FISA court, get a warrant to spy on Americans. That should never happen in this country, and that's what news accounts, everything points to. That's exactly what took place. What we're asking is, let's find out if in fact that took place, and if it did, people need to be held accountable for something like that going on in the United States of America. That's all we're asking. 3.5 months ago, we asked for a special counsel. We've learned a lot of information, new information since then. Let's get this done and get answers for the American people.
So, as we look at what happened today in that committee, the committee room, I mean, it's discouraging because you didn't even get an answer with his appearance today to the question you asked and the action you asked for 3.5 months ago.
Right. And look, let's be clear. I like Jeff Sessions. I think he did a great job in the United States Senate. You did too. He's our Attorney General. But frankly, we're not getting much different treatment from this Justice Department than we got with the Holder and Lynch Justice Department. So I started my question off with one simple question. Did the FBI pay Christopher Steele? Was Christopher Steele, the author of the dossier, on the FBI payroll? When you look at Byron York's column and you look at Kim Strassel's column over the weekend and what took place and the fact that the FBI in 2016 was meeting with Christopher Steele on a regular basis, he was providing them reports that became part of this dossier. I want to know was our government paying the guy who wrote the dossier that the Clintons were financing also?
Well,
Did that happen?
Let's share with the audience your question and the Attorney General's answer when trying to link GPS Fusion, the Democratic Party, the FBI.
This happened in the summer of 2016. We know the Clinton campaign, the Democrat National Committee, paid through a law firm, Fusion GPS, to produce the dossier. We know the author was Christopher Steele. It's been reported that he was on the payroll of the FBI. I'm just wanting to know if, in fact, that is the case.
I'm not able to provide an answer to you.
Did the FBI present the dossier to the FISA court?
I'm not able to answer that.
Well,
Did you get the impression, Congressman, that he was not answering because he didn't feel he should, or did you get the feeling, as I did, that he didn't know the answer to your question?
yeah, good point, Lou, and I wish, frankly, I would have asked him that. I don't know. But the idea that you cannot tell us if someone's on the payroll. We have certain people who are part of our staff in our congressional offices here in Washington and our district offices in Ohio. I know how many people they are. I know what they get paid. I know if they're on the payroll or not. He's the head of the Justice Department. The FBI is part of the Justice Department. Was, in fact, the Justice Department in the summer of 2016, in the midst of a presidential campaign, paying someone who was out writing a dossier that was also being financed by the Democrat National Committee? That is a fundamental question. We're not asking, did you look at what the dossier may have been used, how it was done. All we're asking is, was this individual being paid? That's a pretty simple question, and it should be an answer. And frankly, why are they so reluctant to tell us if they took the dossier to the FISA court? If it was part of the basis for getting a wiretap on Carter Page? Why are they so reluctant to tell us that? If you did it, you did it. Just let us know.
Right. And if they didn't, you would think the answer would have been straightforward and immediate. No, we did not.
Look, I am almost 100% sure. I'm not, but I am almost 100% sure they used it. They took it to the FISA court. It was a basis for spying on Americans. That was used to get the warrant to spy on Americans, and it should not work that way.
It should not work that way, but so much of what is happening in the swamp these days should not be happening that way.
Remember, none of the press had this parts of this dossier long before it ever became public.
Right.
No one in the press would print it because it's a bunch of garbage. It's a National Enquirer type document.
Until BuzzFeed.
Until James Comey on January 6, 2017 goes and meets President-elect Trump in New York, briefs him on the dossier, and then someone leaks the fact that briefing took place. And then once it's leaked out and it's legitimized because there was this meeting.
Who do we know in the FBI who might have leaked that?
I asked the Attorney General that question today, too. Who leaked it, and are you investigating who in fact leaked that? 27 investigations underway into leaks, 3 times as many as at any time previous. Congressman Jim Jordan, as always, thank you. We appreciate it. Take care.
You too. We're coming right back. There is, unfortunately, a lot more out of the swamp. Stay with us. On Capitol Hill today, Attorney General Jeff Sessions pushed back on calls to appoint a second special counsel.
You can have your idea, but sometimes we have to study what the facts are.
We take up Sessions' testimony and the need to investigate the Clinton scandals with Greg Jarrett. And the Republican establishment and Dems piling on, trying to force Roy Moore out of the Alabama Senate race. How are they doing? And where was the left when Bill Clinton was accused of sexual misconduct? We'll have the full report on that and much more straight ahead. Stay with us. Attorney General Sessions says the Department of Justice is reviewing whether to appoint a second special counsel to investigate Clinton corruption. Last night, we talked with 3 congressmen, Matt Gaetz, Louis Gohmert, and Andy Biggs, all of whom are urging Sessions to do just that. Congressman Gaetz made an extremely important point about any reluctance on the part of this administration to investigate Hillary Clinton's email scandals and the obvious pay-for-play corruption of the Clinton Foundation.
We can't live in a world where when you lose an election, it's a de facto immunity deal. That erodes the rule of law in this country. And if we don't get answers from the Department of Justice, that's what we've got. And the people currently there are too conflicted to investigate the very facts that they were involved in.
Well, joining us now, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett. Greg, good to have you here.
Good to be here, Lou.
Congressman Gaetz making a very important point, because you could see the reluctance almost throughout the Trump administration to prosecute, to lock her up, as his supporters have famously said for 2 years now, 2.5 years. Your thoughts?
Well, I started writing 13 months ago about Hillary Clinton's appearing to engage in pay-to-play and corruption. Bribery, mail fraud, bank fraud, wire fraud, racketeering. There was plenty of evidence back then for a prosecution. And, you know, Jeff Sessions has been sitting on his hands now for many months, long ago, he should have announced the appointment of second special counsel to investigate Clinton, Comey, and Lynch.
There was a curious statement today by the Attorney General to Congressman Trent Franks. If we could put up this quote, because I think this is important. We are going to bring, said the Attorney General, independent prosecutors to review a host of matters out there. Hopefully we can decide if there are matters that need to be investigated. Can you decipher for us what the Attorney General was talking about? Independent prosecutors will be brought in to decide if there should be independent prosecutors? I mean, that's strange.
To say that Jeff Sessions was disappointing today in his testimony is a colossal understatement, but it's consistent with his prior testimony in his confirmation hearing. Then several months later, when he was called to testify, he tends to stumble, fumble, and mumble his way through his testimony. Sometimes it makes little sense. As a lawyer, I was throwing bananas at the TV screen today, trying to answer the questions for him in the correct, logical way. He seems incapable of doing it. And if he can't answer questions of basic legal knowledge, he shouldn't be the Attorney General of the United States. Months ago, I said he should resign. I feel as if he should do so more so now.
Well, it looks like he may be pushed there. Senator McConnell, the majority leader, wants him to stand in for Judge Roy Moore, who's under assault in Alabama. Mitch McConnell making no secret of the fact that he wants Roy Moore out. And today, floating the Attorney General's name to replace him, whether by appointment or election. I don't think it matters much to McConnell. But the issue here of all of the conflicts that were addressed here today by particularly Congressman Jim Jordan earlier on this broadcast. You're talking about the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein. Mm-hmm. You're talking about Andrew McCabe, the number 2 at the FBI.
Robert Mueller.
Robert Mueller himself, going back to Uranium One. And there is no question that they are so conflicted on its face. You wonder how Jeff Sessions is the one who ended up recused and they not.
Yeah. Look, all of these guys, Weissman, Mueller, Rosenstein, they were all engaged in what appears to be a cover-up of Uranium One. They had a legal duty to notify Congress. They didn't do it. They kept quiet. And as a consequence, we ended up selling 20% of our uranium assets to the Russians, and the Clintons got enriched in the process.
Yeah, and also they did not apparently inform CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment, a group of independent individuals as well as department heads throughout government. So where are we now? Sessions is blocked. He has blocked himself. Rod Rosenstein, Andrew McCabe, others. Andrew Weissman is now working for the special counsel, Robert Mueller. There is no sign that one of them wants to recuse himself nor to resign.
Sessions has recused himself out of a job, essentially. He should step down, but not before appointing a special counsel to investigate Hillary Clinton and Comey and Lynch. And not just for the Uranium One, but to reopen and re-examine the email scandal, because it appears as though there's some evidence that James Comey and Loretta Lynch were protecting Hillary Clinton and deliberately, perhaps, misinterpreted the law.
It's the testimony of the fired FBI director himself.
Sure. She did engage in intentional acts which violated the law. She did engage in gross negligence in the mishandling of classified documents. Both of those are clear violations of the Espionage Act.
So how do we get to it? You have
special
at the top,
counsel. That's the only way to do it. Because
so we would have the situation where we have a second special counsel investigating the first special counsel, in effect.
To some extent, because to the extent that Robert Mueller covered it up, the Uranium One, he should be investigated. I mean, it sounds crazy.
This is a farce now. We're talking about a farce cubed with the addition of another special counsel. But it is also clear, because of the conflicts that exist in the appointment of this first special counsel, if we may refer to Robert Mueller as Robert Mueller, the first special counsel, that the Justice Department itself is so conflicted, you can't rely on the Justice Department to investigate the Clinton Foundation, the Clinton emails, and the cover-up, if it indeed is that, by these conflicted officials at the top of the Justice Department and FBI.
Sessions cannot ably perform his job because he has too many conflicts of interest.
Who the hell can?
Well, the president could. I'll give you the answer. Alex Acosta,
okay,
Labor Secretary, fine lawyer,
former
experience at the DOJ, clerk for Sam Alito. Under the Vacancies Reform Act, the president can appoint him as the new Attorney General.
He's already been confirmed. So
He's already been confirmed. He doesn't have to be confirmed. He can step in day one and clean up the mess that Sessions has made. And maybe he could decide without dithering to appoint a special counsel, or he can handle the investigation of Hillary Clinton himself.
It is pretty clear at this point that no matter who is appointed second special counsel, who takes over the Justice Department as Attorney General once Jeff Sessions has decided the direction he's going, that the entire FBI management and leadership, the entire Justice Department, top officials, and the Attorney General, that has to be cleaned up. This is now an enterprise that is suspect by the American people, has no competence, and it has to really be cleaned up.
Under Mueller and Comey, the FBI went rogue. They are now an independent deep state actor that cannot be trusted.
Do you know who likes you a lot right now?
Who's that?
A guy by the name of Eric Holder, who's been taking a lot of punishment for the original corruption. Greg Jarrett, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Good to see you. Be sure to vote in our poll tonight. Do you have any confidence in Attorney General Jeff Sessions to investigate Democratic corruption and collusion? Cast your vote on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. We'd love to hear from you. Follow me on Twitter at Lou Dobbs. Like me on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram at Lou Dobbs Tonight. No verdict yet after 5 days of deliberations in the corruption trial of Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. The jury yesterday told the judge they were deadlocked. The judge told the jury, take as much time as you need. Relax, take it easy, come to a decision. Today, jurors sent no notes nor questions as they deliberated for a whole 5 hours. But then they were sent home just ahead of the heavy traffic, and they left at 3:30, as is their customary practice. On Wall Street today, stocks closing lower, the Dow down 30 points, the S&P down 6, the Nasdaq down 20. Volume on the big board, 3.5 billion shares, and the White House is reportedly considering former PIMCO chief Mohammed El-Arian for vice chair of the Federal Reserve. Presumably, that's who Jerome Powell would like. He was just nominated as the Fed chair. Household debt hitting a record high in the third quarter, nearly $13 trillion. Some delinquency rates are rising, and the crisis in Venezuela is worsening. The country defaulting after missing key interest payments. And a reminder to listen to my reports 3 times a day, coast to coast, on the Salem Radio Network. Up next, Attorney General Sessions suffering something of a lapse in his recollections as he appeared before the House Judiciary Committee. A lot of lapses, actually.
I did not recall this event, which occurred 18 months before my testimony of a few weeks ago, and I would gladly have reported it.
I'll have a few thoughts on the Attorney General's testimony, his appearance in the Judiciary Committee. My commentary coming up next. Stay with us. We'll be right back. What a treat we had today on Capitol Hill. Attorney General Jeff Sessions before the House Judiciary Committee. And the Attorney General harshly criticized by both Dems and Republicans, Dems over his apparent failure to remember much of anything at all.
Frankly, I had no recollection of this meeting until I saw these news reports. I do now recall that the March 2016 meeting at the Trump Hotel that Mr. Papadopoulos attended, but I have no clear recollection of the details of what he said at that meeting.
Did anyone else at that meeting, including then-candidate Trump, react in any way to what Mr. Papadopoulos had presented?
I don't recall. I don't recall it. I don't recall it. I do not recall such a conversation. I've read that in the paper recently, but I don't recall ever being made aware of that. I'm not, I don't recall how that exactly occurred.
The Attorney General's failure to recollect, questioned by Democratic Congressman Hakeem Jeffries. He referred to Sessions' interview on this broadcast a year ago.
On October 4th, 2016, during a TV interview with Lou Dobbs, you criticized Hillary Clinton for telling FBI investigators, "I can't remember," approximately 35 times. You also stated during that Lou Dobbs interview that the intentional failure to remember can constitute perjury.
Now, honestly, I certainly don't believe the Attorney General in any way is committing perjury. I think he's a nice fellow, in fact, a good man. But he is not carrying out his duties as Attorney General as anyone could reasonably expect, certainly not the President of the United States. It is clear each time that he testifies that he has forgotten just a little more, too much, in fact, of his distinguished career. He is obviously not leading or managing the Justice Department. His deputies are all too obviously leading him. Or more accurately, it appears from today's testimony, misleading him. And in his few public appearances since he took the job, he does not look like a man who has found either joy or fulfillment in being this nation's top law enforcement officer. I would offer Sessions this counsel. He has served the public well, and now is the time to serve himself. Put aside the battles you obviously don't relish, the fights that are so important to the nation. Don't deny your family and your friends now, or yourself. Our quotation of the evening, this one from Mark Twain, who said this: "If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything." We're coming right back with much, much more. Stay with us. President Trump on his way home after his successful trip to Asia.
Very proud of it from a standpoint of security and safety, military, very proud, and trade. You will see numbers that you won't believe over the years.
We take up the president's America First policies and his accomplishments with Dr. Sebastian Gorka. And a daredevil transforming into real life Iron Man and even setting a world record while he did it. We'll show you his incredible superpower right here next. You don't want to miss it. Stay with us. We're coming right back. You know, I can't wait personally to find out whether those 3 UCLA basketball players who were detained in China for shoplifting are going to express their gratitude to President Trump, because he's the one who, persuaded the Chinese to spring those fellas.
2 days ago, I had a great conversation with President Xi. What they did was unfortunate. You're talking about very long prison sentences. They do not play games.
The 3 players were held under hotel arrest by the Chinese over the weekend while their teammates returned to the United States Saturday. They're on their way back now. Thank you, President Trump. Joining me now, Fox News national security strategist and contributor, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Great to have you with us. Let's start with the affinity between Xi and President Trump. Obviously is sufficient to spring those 3 basketball playing shoplifters, or shoplifting basketball players. I don't know how to construct.
Yes, look, the whole trip is just one success after another. Look at the reception, compare the reception President Trump received to the reception President Obama received. I mean, not only the visit to the Forbidden City, the adulation of the crowds, the national anthem being played by the Chinese army, It beats coming out of the back of Air Force One with no stairs and no red carpet. So it's a reassertion of American leadership, and whether it's recognition in the Middle East or recognition in Asia, or NATO deciding finally after decades to pay that 2% of GDP on defense, it's hard to choose. Which is more successful, the foreign policy Donald Trump or the domestic Donald Trump, and the stock market and the economy and unemployment? It's hard to choose.
Well, the good news is, Sebastian, I've got a bulletin for you here. You don't have to. You get both. That's the great thing about the Trump era. The Trump, excuse me, not era. The Trump epic.
Right.
It would be the correct, I think, styling.
All 10 months of it, right, Lou? It's incredible. 10 months.
It is remarkable in every way. A new special counsel. Today, the Judiciary Committee focused on that with the Attorney General, who continues to be, if you will, the bane of the Trump administration, recusing himself, and for all the world appearing to be an Attorney General who's indifferent to driving, managing, or leading the Justice Department, but rather seems to be presiding over it, and not always alertly. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that the Trump administration inherited a level of politicization across the interagency that I don't think we have seen in the history of the United States of America. The DOJ, the IRS, even the CIA and the FBI was used as a political weapon by the last administration.
The entire intelligence apparatus.
Yes, I mean, Brennan was a political hack. We now see General Hayden following his line, still carrying water for the Obama narrative of Russia collusion. No, the fact is we need somebody with real stamina. We need somebody with backbone. A.G. Sessions is an honorable man, but right now we have massive scandals. Just the uranium one scandal by itself is probably, I said it before, after the Rosenbergs, probably the most important national security scandal in the 20th or 21st century of U.S. history. The idea that 20% of our uranium is sold to Russia, and that $140 million makes it into the Clinton Foundation at the same time. We don't need special prosecutors, Lou. We need the DOJ to do its job.
Yeah, well, I think one of the surprises for many, I wasn't, and no one associated with this broadcast, including our audience, was surprised at the politicization of the Obama administration, whether it be the Justice Department, the IRS, the State Department, which was first politicized beyond recognition under the Clintons. But the reality here is asserting itself now, and that is that the Trump administration, we all assumed, would replace all of the Obama holdovers and would reach deep into each department and rip out the, if you will, neoliberal, left-wing, in some cases radical holdovers of what turned out to be a very radical administration. It didn't happen. They're in place, as you know better than nearly anyone. And that is a task that is urgent. It is absolutely critically necessary, and it's not happening yet.
The person who said it was absolutely right. Personnel is policy. And not only is it the hardcore left-wing ideologues that in many cases are still in place inside the bureaucracy, but beyond that, it's also the web, the network of the old boy network sticking up for each other. And I'll just ask your viewers to do one thing. Just do a little Google search on who Rod Rosenstein is, who he's worked for in the past, and who his closest buddies have been for the last 10 years. And you'll see that it's not just ideology, Lou, it's massive conflicts of interest, which mean these individuals cannot be unbiased when it comes to apolitical investigation of strategic level crimes. That's the issue.
By the way, the good news, Sebastian, you should know, our audience doesn't even have to Google it. We told them, and we tell them regularly about those conflicts, which is the basis, after all, for a second special counsel, and every reason to question why this Attorney General has, I have never seen in my career a situation in which one man is connected to so much chaos and despair in the case of personnel. Look at Jeff Sessions, a quiet and mannered fellow who has chaos in his home state as a result of his being appointed Attorney General. There's chaos in the Justice Department. There's chaos in the administration over his appointment and his failure to lead. It just goes on and on. A man with substantial impact, and unfortunately so much of it very negative. You obviously think the president did extraordinarily well on this trip. Now he turns to domestic policy. Your thoughts there?
Well, it's very simple. It's got to be tax reform. It has to be tax reform. If we can't get something out of the Hill with the pressure from the president, then that's going to be a dark day for the Make America Great Again agenda. So the next test is getting something that's really, it doesn't have to be perfect. Let's remember what the great Ronald Reagan said: give me 70% of the loaf now and we'll come back later. And let's give the Americans a real Christmas present that they can value with some kind of tax break that simplifies the whole system for all of us.
From you to Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, Sebastian Gorka, great to have you here.
Thank you, Lou.
Please roll the video now and watch as this real-life Iron Man, look at that. Now, there's only one word: cool beyond cool. That would be two words, actually. Well, three: cool, beyond, and cool. Real-life Iron Man racing into the record books, in fact. Richard Browning is his name. He reached a top speed of 32 miles an hour, and with that, secured the fastest speed in a jetpack ever. That is absolutely amazing. Up next, accusations of sexual misconduct on Capitol Hill, raising new questions about Bill Clinton, the allegations against him. And, well, some of those charges were actually true. Far more than allegations. We'll have the report on the left's hypocrisy and, well, very short memory. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Establishment Republicans banding together with the Dems, calling on Judge Roy Moore to exit the Alabama Senate race over allegations of sexual misconduct, allegations that Moore denies and no one so far has proved. It is, without question, a rush to judgment, an abandonment of due process, and it reeks just a bit of left-wing hypocrisy. Where was the national left-wing media when former Vice President Biden was accused of inappropriately touching women and girls, and doing so publicly? And where was the Democratic outrage when several women accused former President Bill Clinton of sexual misconduct? By the way, those accusations are even more recent than those against Judge Roy Moore. Shouldn't there be a clamor from the left as well? Fox News Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen takes a look at how the Clinton allegations were covered nearly 2 decades ago.
Lou, good evening. In the tsunami of sexual harassment allegations that has subsumed American politics, media, and finance, one name, slowly but surely, has resurfaced.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Ms. Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
Beyond his Oval Office affair with a 22-year-old intern, which led to impeachment, President Clinton was also accused of raping Juanita Broaddrick in a hotel room, groping Kathleen Willey, and other incidents similar to the allegations now roiling America. In this hashtag #MeToo moment, Michelle Goldberg writes in the New York Times, we should look clearly at the credible evidence that Juanita Broaddrick told the truth when she accused Clinton of raping her. Democrats are guilty of apologizing for Clinton when they shouldn't have.
I think people are starting to believe and realize that I was truly sexually assaulted by Bill Clinton.
In The Atlantic, Caitlin Flanagan says it was a pattern of behavior. It included an alleged violent assault. The women involved had far more credible evidence than many of the most notorious accusations that have come to light in the past 5 weeks. But Clinton, Flanagan notes, was not left to the swift and pitiless justice that today's accused men have experienced. Rather, he was rescued by a surprising force: machine feminism.
You look great!
Flanagan points to a 1998 Times op-ed by feminist icon Gloria Steinem, which overlooked Broderick to argue even if the allegations are true, the president is not guilty of sexual harassment. He is accused of having made a gross, dumb, and reckless pass at a supporter. President Clinton took no for an answer. The widespread liberal response to the sex crime accusations against Bill Clinton, Flanagan concludes, found their natural consequence 20 years later in the behavior of Harvey Weinstein. Stay loudly and publicly and extravagantly on the side of signal leftist causes, and you can do what you want in the privacy of your offices and hotel rooms.
Bill Clinton had been a great voice for women in public and a great violator of women in private. That's all been adjudicated. He's been impeached. He's paid a price. Now what we need to do is to call out men, call out all men to be accountable for saying what they see.
Liberal men are also chiming in, with MSNBC host Chris Hayes tweeting, as gross and cynical and hypocritical as the right's "what about Bill Clinton" stuff is, it's also true that Democrats and the center left are overdue for a real reckoning with the allegations against him, unquote. Lou?
James, thank you. James Rosen. Up next, Senate Republicans today, including the repeal of the individual mandate in their tax proposals, as President Trump asked them to. We'll take it up with Ed Rollins, Michael Goodwin. And what about Judge Roy Moore? And what about those accusations? And what about the Republican establishment? We continue in one moment. Stay with us. In our online poll we asked you last night, do you believe Mitch McConnell and the Republican establishment should honor the principles of due process and fairness and let the voters of Alabama choose their own senator? Only 95% of you believe in the Constitution, and you said yes. Joining me now, Chairman of the Great America PAC, Ed Rollins, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist for the New York Post, Michael Goodwin, both Fox Business contributors. Michael, let's start with, if we may, Jeff Sessions. Each time he appears, as I said earlier in the broadcast, it becomes more painful to watch. It was a disaster today.
Yeah, I had the similar reaction, Lou, that he's not a bad man, but he's a bad attorney general. And I think going there, not being able to answer questions from either Democrats or Republicans in convincing fashion, in many cases just, I don't recall, or I can't discuss it, I can't say. I mean, this is unsatisfactory. Why would he, I mean, he wrote that letter which saying we're open to a new special counsel, which teed up both sides.
Right.
And he went there and had nothing to say, and both sides, you know.
And the Dems were attacking him, as you say, he's a good man. They attacked him as if he were a bad man.
Yeah.
And the Republicans didn't know what the hell to say to the man because he couldn't remember, Ed. He said, I can't recall. I don't remember the details, endlessly.
This was a do-over. And normally when you do a do-over, you do it better. And this was not better. And I'm a big fan of Senator Sessions, Attorney General. He cannot run that department. That's a department that's full of 10,000 lawyers. It has been politicized over the last 8 years. He needed to go in there and clean it up, fix it, drive it forward. He's not capable of doing that. And I don't even think he's capable now of the alternative of sending him back to Alabama to be the alternative to Moore, which is...
As I watched him with increasing pain, I could not understand why the department, the Justice Department, didn't have an aide at his right and one at his left. Because you're talking about a 90,000-person department, some of the most important, critical, complex issues facing the country and this government. And he didn't even have an aide to whom he could turn to say, or an aide that could whisper in his ear, which also suggests maybe he meant never to answer a single damn question.
Yeah. Well, the answers were not substantive. And Ed and I both remarked that we believe it was his wife sitting behind him.
Correct.
Which is pretty unusual for a sitting cabinet member. Normally, if it's a confirmation, that's one thing, but this was not that. I repeat, Lou, my contention early on that this is Donald Trump's worst personnel mistake. Making Sessions the Attorney General led to this situation where he had to recuse himself, and now we have Roy Moore is another consequence of that decision.
Yeah, Sessions has been a lightning rod for conflict and collapse, unfortunately, and maybe Mitch McConnell, after all, does have a Solomon-like solution, and that is to write in, if the people of Alabama would decide, Jeff Sessions' name.
But what you would need to do is, write in would be difficult if more stays. What you would need to do is to basically move the present Senator Pro Tem, who was appointed, move him out, put Sessions, have him be appointed, have the governor postpone the election till she can wait till next 18 and let Sessions sit there for a while and be prepared to run for re-election.
Where are you going to have him sit?
Have him sit in the Senate.
Oh,
well, go back to the Senate.
I think in a very convoluted way we got to the same place.
It solves two problems.
Yeah, it does. And like I say, I hate to say this, McConnell may have finally come up with an idea.
Well, I feel badly for Moore. I like Moore, but I think he's damaged goods at this point in time, and I think it's going to be very difficult.
Well, I prefer due process. I'd like to.
I do too, absolutely.
But I'm looking for loopholes when it comes to Jeff Sessions, and Roy Moore may become a loophole. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Michael.
Sure.
Thank you, Ed. That's it for us tonight. Thanks for being with us. Join us tomorrow night. We appreciate you being with us tonight. Good night from New York.